Alrighty, hello. This is Janai with Karmic Fixer Tarot. I have kind of an out there query. I've been watching a bunch of clips from people at the new Michael Jackson movie. You know, just kind of having a good time. Celebrating Michael Jackson, his music, his legacy. A lot of really amusing videos out there, and now I read comment sections from people who are enjoying these videos also. And a question that comes up, you know, people have a sentiment of how Michael would react to seeing these videos. Generally, most people feel like Michael would be very proud and very touched to see the reactions that people are having to this movie based on his extraordinary life. So I was kind of curious. And yeah, this is kind of an unusual query that I'm asking. It's going to be like I have a spread that I like to use, the Advice from the Universe spread. And I think I'll use that here. It's a 3-card spread. And I just kind of want to see what Spirit has to say as far as how Michael Jackson in his, I guess, his current plane of existence, wherever he may be, if he has any opinions or whatnot on how people are not only reacting to the movie, but how they're honoring his legacy. So I guess I have a question for Spirit. Spirit, how is Michael Jackson responding to, how does he feel about this movie? And how does he feel about his legacy, his music, and how it's being honored by his fans all over the world? The movie, I think, came out, it was either last weekend as I'm posting it, or maybe it's been out for a few weekends now. I'm a little behind on pop culture. And just for fun, I'm actually going to use my Uno deck. I've been wanting to do more practice with UNOmancy, as I call it. I'm doing a little cardomancy with Uno cards. So I'm going to give this a quick shuffle. And yeah, we'll see how this goes. We'll see if I channel anything, if I'll even post this. It's just something I'm kind of curious about. And it's been on my mind, just kind of watching people enjoy the film, you know, enjoy Michael's legacy. People of all ages who were children during his Jackson 5 era, who were children of the 80s and 90s, kind of grew up with him. And people who are rediscovering him after his passing, rediscovering his legacy, his music, his iconic dance, you know, just kind of his impact on culture, which is beautiful to see. So I guess I'm rambling. So Spirit, how would Michael react to people reacting to this film? If Michael has any feelings about it one way or the other, how does he feel watching people enjoy his music and celebrate his legacy through this film? Okay, so I'm going to cut the cards. So cut the cards, and I'm going to do card number 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and the first card is going to be things to know. Second card will be new perspective, and third card will be action steps. Maybe a way that people can continue to remember Michael or whatnot. Okay, first card. We have a blue 2, or blue plus 2. Maybe this is an invitation to draw a few more clarifiers. So I'm going to draw 2 more. Okay, I'm going to pan down a little bit. This is, oh, let me see if I can reorient the camera. Alrighty, so I started to pull a few cards. I guess I was just kind of hoping to channel Michael Jackson's reaction to the new Michael movie and the way people are really enjoying themselves. You know, going to the theater, it's become kind of a moment. It reminds me of the Wicked movies, the moment that turned into, people coming in, Wicked garb. But in this case, for the Michael movie, coming dressed in Michael Jackson's most iconic outfits, pulling his dance moves, singing his songs, really just enjoying the moment. So I was curious to see if Spirit had anything to say about how Michael would react to that. I figured it'd just be a fun, quick little set, or rather quick little spread. And I was going to do my 3-card usual spread, Advice from the Universe. First card would be what I need to know. Second card would be new perspective, and third card would be action steps. I'm not sure exactly what an action step would look like in trying to get maybe a reaction or just a general feeling about something, the type of query. Wasn't necessarily asking about a particular action, but we'll see what this card has to say. So I pulled this first card, or rather flipped this first card, and it was the +2. Now the blue suit, the way I interpret that is to be analogous to the hearts in standard playing card cartomancy, or the cups in tarot. So that's the suit of love, relationships, emotion, intuition. And I took this to be an invitation to pull 2 more cards as a signifier, or as 2 more cards as a clarification. So here we go. Oh, now we have the red suit, which I take to be analogous to the wands in tarot and the clubs in playing card cartomancy. And this one's inviting me to pull 2 more cards. And that tends to be more clarifiers than I like to work with, but we'll see where this goes. So we'll come back to that. Oh, and we have another 2. And looking here, I look at the yellow suit as kind of the pentacles in tarot, or the diamonds in cartomancy. And in this particular suit, the suit of yellow, the way I interpret that in Uno, like the pentacles, that's maybe the physical body, that's treasures, that's assets, that's accumulation, or, it can also be quite literally money. So I think for starters, we're looking at legacy. We're looking at how legacy is built, by, starting small, collaboration. So maybe this represents how Michael's legacy was built, collaborating with others, collaborating with his brothers to start with, and taking the seed that was his talent, something that he had, something that he built. He spent his lifetime honing his talent, becoming better at it, and having the diligence to grow it into what it became. And I think the 2, let me go ahead and pull my second clarifier. And we have the 6. The 6 of Cups, which is really interesting. 6 of Cups. When you think about that, that is, let's see, number 6 is kind of nostalgia. When I think of what the 6 of Cups might represent in tarot, I think about nostalgia. I think about feelings of warmth, feelings of home, things that recall your childhood. I think there's something about Michael Jackson, of course, that reminds people of childhood. You can also maybe think about the childhood that he had, a very sort of troubled childhood. He managed to become one of the biggest stars of his generation, and he'd been a big star since he was a child, but that also cost him the kind of childhood that normal kids, that regular people would have. And while he didn't get to cherish his own childhood because he was becoming the legend, Michael Jackson, he is somebody who meant a lot to other people in their childhoods, I think. So I think this blue 6, 6 in the suit of emotion and the suit of relationships, love, um, suit of intuition. I think that's what this represents here. Let's see, I think I've only pulled one clarifier. So let me try one more in keeping with this card, which is a card which I didn't talk that much about the red cards. The red suit, again, representing wands and tarot, or clubs and playing cardomancy. And that's the suit of action, passion, creativity, which is also in and of itself something that's very important to Michael Jackson's legacy. You know, he's very creative, very talented. You know, his dance moves were unique. When you think of things like the moonwalk, when that came out, you know, he based his own dance, his own style off of people like James Brown, and you know, he managed to modernize it for the times. And there was something always otherworldly, something very creative about, you know, Michael Jackson's moves, what he contributed to the world, what he contributed to music and pop, a sort of innovation, and just kind of this passion, this creativity, and this drive that he poured into his music. So I think I'm going to pull one more clarifier. And the yellow one, and again in Uno cardomancy, or UNOmancy as I call it, I tend to think of the yellows again as kind of the Pentacles card, the card of assets, the card of treasures, the card of wealth, the card of anything relating to one's physical world. And I think this being the one card, this could represent how I think how Michael's talent, and how his brother's talent also, but how the talent of this particular family was able to be the seed to bring them out of hardship, bring them out of poverty. You know, their roots in Gary, Indiana, humble beginnings. I guess you could see this as humble beginnings, and the way that they took the seed of their talent collectively as a family and were able to create an opportunity for themselves to change the world, to change the landscape of pop music, and to, you know, create a higher standard of living for themselves, pull themselves out of poverty into, by all accounts, a very lavish, prosperous lifestyle. So a bunch of clarifiers starting from here. So I think the thing to know is something that I guess a lot of Michael Jackson fans already know. He had a singular talent. In a family of very talented individuals, he managed to stand out, and you know, his talent helped to galvanize the family and bring them onto the world stage. And so I think that's what this particular spread here talks about, things to know, or what to know about Michael Jackson. So let's move on to card number 2, a new perspective. And we have the 5 of Pentacles, or rather the yellow 5. I tend to think, again, I think of this as the Pentacles. And a lot of times, based on my interpretation, the first thing that I am reminded of is maybe how it corresponds to tarot or playing cardomancy. Now, as I've been learning cardomancy, the 5s kind of represent, to me anyway, represent maybe a discord sort of card. The 5s represents a number that is, see, when you think of 4, you think of stability, but 5 is kind of a challenge to that stability, kind of a change. Now, if you think of, say, the 5 of Pentacles, for example, in tarot, that's a card that represents needing help. That's a card that represents poverty, which is interesting because, you know, this is a suit that, especially given Michael's lifestyle, by all accounts, he was a very wealthy man. So for this to come up, you could think of this as a card of hardship. And hardship doesn't necessarily have to be confined to, you know, lack of money, because again, Michael Jackson was known for living a lavish lifestyle. Um, sources might vary as to what his lifestyle was like in his waning years, as he was, as he got older and closer to the end of his life. But I think this 5 doesn't necessarily have to represent lack of money, for example. This could be a challenge to one's stability, maybe a challenge to one's health. As Michael got older, issues with his health. He's had medical emergencies. Like if you think about back in the 80s, I guess the concert, I can't remember if it was a concert or if it was if he was filming the whole Pepsi thing, his hair caught fire, and I think that led to lifelong health issues. And plus, he also dealt with vitiligo, and that was a controversial, health struggle of his. People talked about whether he bleached his skin or not. Michael was really kind of, his health, changes to his physical body, changes to his appearance as the years went on, pretty controversial. So this could maybe represent the challenges he had physically, not necessarily just with money, but maybe there were some challenges there too. Later in life, challenges with, dependency on painkillers, because, there were, again, when you think about, for example, the fire, or rather his injury with the Pepsi, I can't remember if it was a shoot for a commercial or if it was a music video or if it was a live event, or his hair caught fire. Please let me know. And the Michael Jackson fans, I apologize for not being completely up on that particular event in his life, but definitely let me know in the comments any insights you might have as to what the 5 can represent. But I think this can represent a challenge to his physical health, and of course there's also the challenge to his legacy as far as allegations go, and that's something that you could say that probably hasn't ended over the course of his later life, and in the wake of his passing so many years ago. It's been over a decade at this point, I'm sure. Perhaps even, I can't remember the year that he passed. But yeah, this could represent a challenge to maybe his legacy, a challenge to his physical health when he was with us. And this might be something that's kind of underlying. There's a lot of joy right now being reminded of his legacy through this film, but it might also be a reminder of the hardships, the sacrifices that Michael had to make to create the art that so many people gravitated toward. So I think this 5 represents a lot of things. It represents the physical toll that being Michael Jackson took on Michael Jackson. And out of a lot of hardship came this legacy, this beautiful music, this beautiful body of work, and the cultural significance that he had. But that didn't come without sacrifice. So I think that's also a thing to remember. This might not necessarily even be a thing to mourn, but I think this could be something to help us appreciate what he gave the world even more. And yeah, I think that's what this yellow 5 represents here. So taking a look at our last card, an action step. Again, I'm not entirely sure what an action step might be when we're just kind of having an appreciation for Michael. And at first, part of me was thinking that this would be maybe just some sort of channeling. I was wanting to know how Michael might feel beyond the grave about the renewed interest and appreciation for his music and for his work as an artist. But maybe this is more for us, just to kind of think of, just kind of a way to view Michael's legacy and what it might mean to him, or what his legacy did mean to him while he was here with us, and perhaps maybe beyond. So let's take a look. More clarifiers, or more invitations to pull clarifiers, I guess. The yellow 2, again, pentacles / diamonds, I guess. Okay, I'm realizing that I was talking and I was not recording anything. So whenever I try and do a slapdash sort of reading, it doesn't pan out the way I need it to. But yeah, this card, the 2, called for a few more clarifiers. And we have the red 7, which I take to be synonymous with the wands in tarot or the clubs and playing cartomancy. So we have the 7, the red 7, and we have the yellow 8, which again, the yellow suit I take to be analogous to pentacles in tarot or the diamonds in playing cartomancy. And I think as far as an action step, these cards here, I think they are a way to regard Michael's legacy. His legacy wasn't without controversy, particularly in his later years. When you think about the allegations, unfortunately, at least for me, it's hard to think about Michael Jackson, the music that he left behind, his extraordinary showmanship, the fact that he was a once-in-a-lifetime artist. Unfortunately, it's hard to remember that without the undercurrent, without the asterisk of allegations and the impact that it had on his legacy, and the impact, to be fair, that it has on the people who have made the allegations. And I think these cards right here represent a way to rethink about the legacy of Michael Jackson. I think a lot of people I think there is the urge to, I guess, to not regard the artist anymore because they're controversial. Maybe people feel like they can't enjoy his music anymore because of the allegations and the impact that has on his legacy. And I know there's some people who literally can't enjoy it anymore because it's very hard to separate the artist from the allegations, which I 100% respect. But I also think that, and I guess this is individual, I think that it is still okay. I think it's still worthwhile to enjoy Michael Jackson's music. And in times like these, something about this movie, for example, people coming to see this movie, it's turning into an event very similar to, I think, how the Wicked movies turned into an event. All of the Wicked fans coming out, singing the songs, dressed in the costumes. It's a big event in and of itself. I think that's what's happening, of course, with the Michael movie. In fact, that's the thing that drew me to doing this reading here, just the impact that Michael's music still has on his fans, the impact that the music has on younger fans or younger generations that are coming to his music and people who grew up listening to his music. I think that impact is still there. The joy that his music brought so many people is still there, even though there's the undercurrent of controversy. And I think this, as maybe an action step, is to, I think it's, for fans of Michael, they don't necessarily need any cards to tell you that I still think it's a beautiful thing. And I think these cards represent that it's still a beautiful thing to appreciate the beautiful things that people bring to the world. Maybe there's an attempt to separate the artist from their art. Maybe there's an inability in some cases to separate the artist from the art. And that's an individual sort of basis. But I think that this represents being able to appreciate what Michael brought to the world, whether or not, depending on how you feel about the allegations. And this isn't to cast a pall or to cast judgment on people who have made those allegations, because ultimately we don't know. The only people who do know are the people with the allegations and, you know, Michael Jackson, who is no longer here with us. And I think I guess just speaking personally, I think it's still okay to, even if you believe and if you don't believe that he did it, you know, this part might not be for you. But if there's a part of you that believes that he did it, I think it's still okay to take the artist as the artist that you believe him to be, and also take the work that the artist created. Again, it's going to be hard for people to separate the art from the artist a lot of times, but sometimes it isn't that hard. And I guess it just depends on how much their art meant to you, how much it touched you. You know, there are plenty of people who listened to Michael's music and it helped them through difficult times. It was actually very, you know, very kind of meditative, very comforting for people. So I think this represents how complicated his legacy has become. But there are moments, like we were seeing online, where it also seems very simple what his legacy is. His legacy is still electrifying music, you know, electrifying dance moves, you know, innovative fashion. And I think everybody, you know, people have their own opinions on that. But I think this card is an invitation to, it's an invitation to remember his legacy. Even in, you know, in times like these. You know, I think part of the reason why watching those videos really kind of got to me was that in very stressful times, you know, all over the world, specifically here in the US, that we carve out time for joy. We carve out a space for joy, pleasure, merriment, creativity, passion, you know, regarding the legacy of one of the most significant artists of a few generations. You know, people growing up in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, you know, they have their Michael Jackson era that they were growing up in. And I think it's still okay to cherish that music, no matter what the controversy of the artist came to be. So I think that's what these particular cards represent. And please, please, please let me know how you feel about that in the comments. It's a controversial subject, and I know that not everyone will agree with my take. And, you know, I understand 100%. And yeah, so this is, I don't know if it's, I channel, but I don't necessarily channel people's spirits. And frankly, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe the intent was to see how Michael might feel about, you know, about the movie and people's response to it. But maybe this is more of a reminder to his fans, or more of a meditation on how his fans feel about it. And ultimately, maybe at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. So usually I would pull a card from the bottom of the deck. My Uno deck is a little messy here. My desk is actually a little messy here. Please excuse the mess. And I'm not even 100% sure that this is going to go up. So we'll see what happens in editing. Or this might just be a write-up. But let me see. I think I'm going to try and pull a bottom of the deck card. My bottom of the deck cards tend to be just kind of a throughput of the energy of either the query or the energy of the answer that came. So I'm holding my phone. I'm going to try and do this one-handed. I might just need to flip over the deck. I think that'll be the easiest thing to do. And we have the 3, the red 3, and the suit of creativity, the suit of passion, the suit of artistry and expression. And I think that 3 I think tends to be a harmony, like a harmonious number. The red suit corresponding to, again, the suit of wands in tarot, or the suit of clubs in playing cards, you know, cardomancy. I think this is a card of exploration, a card of, taking first steps towards something that you're passionate and creative in, something you're passionate about and creative in. And I think, for people who are fans of Michael Jackson, this is just an invitation to explore his music again, to find the joy that his music brings so many people, and to, now's a good invitation to appreciate what his music means to so many people. And I know that's also difficult to do without regarding the artist who created the music. And everybody has their individual feelings, their individual ways about celebrating the legacy of an artist. And artists with controversial legacies, of course, that's not limited to Michael Jackson. When you think of so many other artists who maybe people grew up listening to, or artists that resonated with you, sometimes you maybe don't have to dig too deep before you find a shadow side to this artist. And I think in a lot of ways, sometimes the shadow side fuels their creativity. Perhaps there was the shadow that was inherently dark or murky or complicated, but from that complication, from that shadow, emerges beauty, emerges things that people can appreciate and love for years to come. So I think that's really just kind of the gist of this particular reading. And the throughput is the 3. Exploring the legacy of Michael Jackson, or revisiting the legacy again if he's somebody that you grew up with. And now's a great time to do that. More than anything, his message, throughout his life, his artwork, a message of unity, social consciousness, love, confidence, joy. And, he also had songs that explored, the darker side, the dark night of the soul. Because to be a human being on this planet, we all have our dark nights of the soul that we have to traverse. And it's good to have music or art or something that helps us traverse those times. And that art is created by human beings who aren't perfect, who are just as human as we are. And I think that's one way to regard the music, and regard the people who create the music. So I hope this reading resonates with you. Let me know how you feel in the comments. And this might be actually kind of a messy reading or whatnot. But let me know what you think. And until next time, this is Janai with Karmic Fixer Tarot. And thank you so much for watching.